Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. In today's video, I'll be using Paper Rose Studio's Holy Night collection. I have the 6x6 paper pad. It's also available in the 12x12 size. And I also have the coordinating die cuts. This is not a new collection, but I've had it on hand and finally had a chance to use it. I believe it is still available, and I will have links in the description box below. Sometimes it can be tricky finding Christian Christmas collections, but I love that Paper Rose offers several of them. In the paper collection, there are several sheets that have image and sentiment cut aparts. I'll use a few of them, but some of these are on the smaller size. For my cards, I'll really be focusing on the pattern paper and also adding some of the die cut images and sentiments. So here's a look at the coordinating die cut pack. There are 4 A5 sheets and there's no fussy cutting required. All of the sentiments and images simply pop out. Once I pop out all of the die cut pieces, there are small white tabs along the edge. I simply use a pair of scissors and trim those off. The set includes a sheet of sentiments. Then we have 3 different sheets with lots of beautiful images. There's a couple of nativity scenes, some lovely florals, stars. All of those images match perfectly with the pattern paper. So let's go ahead and get started with card design number 1. I will be using some card sketches for inspiration. The first sketch is from Sugar Pea Designs. This is Sugar Sketch number 15. And if you're interested in any of the sketches I use in this video, including measurements, I share all of that information on my coordinating blog post. The link is in the description box below, or you can simply head over to KristieMarcotte.com. For the background of my card, selected the pattern paper with lots of Christmas sentiments on it. For the strip on the left side of the card, using this distress sort of watercolor looking design, and I did round all 4 of the corners using a corner chomper. I'll layer the background piece on some light blue cardstock, then add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. All of my cards in this video are American Standard A2 size. 4 1/4 inches by 5.5 inches. For the image box, I'm using some white shimmer cardstock, and I did round the right corners. I'll layer it on some rust colored cardstock, also rounding those corners. Before adhering that piece down, I'll first put a scrap piece of cardstock on the right side. That way it stays nice and level. Then I'll adhere it in place. Now I'll add several of the die cut images and also a sentiment. I have Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus, and also a star. And I'm adding the sentiment, "O come all ye faithful." I'll adhere the image die cut pieces down first using Barely Art glue. For the sentiment, I'm adding some double-sided adhesive tape on the back side. And I'll adhere it all the way at the bottom of the image die cut pieces. For a final finishing touch, I'm adding some Love from Lizi peel-offs in the upper left-hand corner. This is the mini circle style in the gold color, and I'm using the medium size circle. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. The second card features different die cut images and sentiment. For card design number 2, the card sketch is from Sugar Pea Designs. This is Sugar Sketch number 16. For the background of my card, using the pattern paper with all the hand-drawn stars. For the smaller pattern paper piece, it's a dark blue tone-on-tone, and it has a bunch of scripture, might even be Christmas song words on it. I'll round the bottom 2 corners, layer it on some dark blue cardstock. And I'll put ATG tape on the back and add this piece on the center of the star pattern paper. Now I'll layer the background piece on the same dark blue cardstock. For most of my cardstock layers, I add an additional 1/8 of an inch, But for the very background, I'm adding an additional 1/4 of an inch. I wanted a wider border for that very background piece. Now I'll put ATG tape on the back and add my card front onto a card base. For the strip that goes across the card, using this tone-on-tone watercolor looking pattern paper, I'll layer it on the same dark blue cardstock, and before adhering it down, I'm adding some scrap pieces of cardstock on the right and left side where it goes off of that center panel of pattern paper. That way it stays at the same level. And I actually put 2 pieces, one's cardstock and the other is a scrap piece of pattern paper. I'll put barely art glue on the back and adhere it in place. The die cut image I'm adding is a bow with some Christmas bells. The bow will go in the center of the watercolor paper, and before adhering it down, I am adding this scrap cardstock piece just on the bottom portion of the bow. Then I'll put glue on the back and adhere it in place. For a sentiment, I'm adding Merry Christmas, and this is a sentiment cut apart that's included in Paper Rose's Merry Christmas sentiment sheets. I love their sentiment sheets and they last forever since there are tons of sentiments. I put double-sided adhesive tape on the back of the sentiment and I'll adhere it at the bottom of the card. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. For card design number 3, the card sketch is from CARDSTOCK. This is sketch number 40. I selected 4 pattern papers for this card. For the very background, I'm using the Distress sort of watercolor design. The smaller panel features lots of the Christmas images, Mary and baby Jesus. We have the nativity scene, an angel, some foliage pieces. I'll layer both of those on dark blue cardstock. Then I'll put ATG tape on the back and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. For the 2 strips on the left side of the card, using more pattern paper, the wider piece has all the different Christmas words and sentiments, and the narrow piece is another watercolor design. I'll layer both of those on the same dark blue cardstock. To adhere that narrow piece, I did add some double-sided adhesive tape on the back. Before adhering this piece on the left side of the card, I'll add the scrap cardstock pieces at the very top and bottom. That way it stays nice and level. Then I'll put glue on the back and adhere it in place. Now I'll bring in several of the die cut images and the sentiment peace plus love plus joy. And I'm using scrapbook.com stack and sort trays to organize all the different die cut pieces for my cards. Behind the sentiment on the right side, I'm adding 2 scrap cardstock pieces, since that area will go off of those strips going down the center of the card. Before adhering the sentiment, I'll first add this leafy foliage piece on the left side. Then I'll put glue on the back of the sentiment and adhere it in place. And the very left of the sentiment will sit on the stem of that foliage piece. I'm also adding 2 of the stars, and I'll put those in the upper right-hand corner. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. For card design number 4, the card sketch is from OWH. This is number 183. For the background of my card, using this beautiful floral paper, this is one of my favorites from the whole collection. I'll be layering it on some dark green cardstock. For the strip on the left side of the card, using some of the burgundy watercolor paper, I'll layer that piece on some white shimmer cardstock. I'll put adhesive on the back, layer the background on the dark green cardstock. Across the card, using more of the Distress watercolor paper, put adhesive on the back and adhere it toward the bottom of the card. Now I'll flip over this panel, put ATG tape on the back, and add my card front onto a card base. Now I am changing up this sketch just a tiny bit. Instead of adding the watercolor panel all the way on the left side of the card, I'm placing it about 1/2 inch in from the left side. And before adhering it down, I will put some scrap cardstock pieces above and below where it goes over that strip at the bottom of the card. Now I'll bring in several of the die cut images and sentiment, plus one of the sentiment cut aparts. It has the word Noel on it. I'll adhere that piece down first. Now I'll add some of the foliage pieces and also the candle image. The sentiment Merry Christmas will sit at the bottom of the candle and more on the right side of the card. With all those other layers, instead of just putting scrap cardstock pieces on the right side of the sentiment, this time I'm adding some thin foam squares. I'm not adding foam dimension behind any of the die cut images, but on the right side of the sentiment, I will add 2 small foam squares. There are lots of layers behind the sentiment on the left side with the different die cut images, pattern paper, and cardstock pieces. So by adding the foam squares on the right side of the sentiment, it keeps it nice and level. For a final finishing touch, I'm adding more Love from Lizi peel-offs. This is the mini circle style in the gold moon dust color. I'll put 3 of the largest size circles in the upper right hand corner. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. For card design number 5, this is a very simple card design. One of the pattern papers has this full panel with a beautiful nativity scene. I used one of Paper Rose's stitched rectangle dies to cut out the image. I'll layer it on some dark blue cardstock. At the bottom of the panel, I'm adding a Love from Lizi peel-off. This is the pinstripe style in clear with gold overlay, and I'm using the widest width. Since I'll be adding a sentiment in the very center, I was able to use some of the small scrap peel-off pieces. I'll wrap the ends around the back, put ATG tape on the back, and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 inch of the white card base showing. For a sentiment, I'm adding Christmas blessings, and this is from the Merry Christmas sentiment sheet cut aparts. For a little extra stability, I put a scrap piece of pattern paper on the back of the sentiment before adhering it down. So there is my finished card. I made 2 of them very similar. For the third card, I used the blue tone-on-tone pattern paper for the background, added a couple of Love from Lizi peel-offs, and this card features the large nativity die cut piece, and I also added one of the small die cut stars above baby Jesus. For card design number 6, one of the pattern papers has this lovely candle design in the lower left hand corner, and on that same sheet it has an angel in the upper right hand corner. I had 1 full sheet of this left, so I wanted to make 2 cards using this paper. I cut down the candle piece to 3.5 inches by 5.5 inches, adhered it on some white shimmer cardstock. And just for a little extra detail and shine, I'll put a Love from Lizi peel-off along the inside edge. This is the pinstripe style in clear with gold overlay, and I'm using the medium width. I'll wrap the ends around the back, add my card front onto a card base. For a sentiment, I'm using one of the cut aparts from the 6x6 paper pad, Peace on Earth. And I'm also adding a few of the die cut images. Lovely foliage piece, a couple of flowers, and also a star. I'll put the largest foliage piece down first, add the sentiment cut apart on top, then I'll finish it off adding the 2 flowers and the small star. And I'll fuss with those final 3 pieces for a little bit until I'm happy with the placement. If I had more of the small flowers left over, I would have put 2 on the right side and 1 on the left side. But instead, I'll add the small star in place of a flower. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. The other card features the angel from that same pattern paper. And using the die cut images, I created a nativity scene underneath the angel. Now here's another look at the 13 cards I made using Paper Rose Studios Holy Night collection. I used the 6x6 paper collection along with the coordinating die cuts. The paper is also available in 12x12, so if you prefer the larger size, that is an option. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I do have links in the description box below. Paper Rose is based in Australia and they do ship their products internationally, but you can also purchase them here in the US, and I have links for both locations in the description box. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.